Hey guys, tonight we descend into a world of ancient shadows, where the air is cool and dry, the rocks hum with memory, and everything smells vaguely like old incense and damp scrolls. You're not in Olympus with all the glitter and thunder. No, you're headed somewhere much quieter, somewhere beneath it all, past the roots of the world tree, through the mists where rivers whisper in languages older than gods, into the underworld itself. But relax, there are no screaming souls or fiery lakes here. Hades' realm isn't the chaos your high school mythology textbook promised. No flaming pits, no demons with tridents chasing you around. Instead, think dim corridors lined with sleepy spirits and echoing marble halls where time doesn't so much stop as forget itself. You wander past a gate carved from obsidian, patrolled by a dog with one too many heads, and enter a world designed not for punishment, but peace. Or at least, that's what the landlord wanted. Because this story isn't about doom. It's about Hades, and the one thing he truly wanted. Not power, not gold, not even vengeance. Just a quiet garden. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, leave a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'd love to know. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge forward through ancient soil that doesn't stick to your feet. It's dry and powdery like sifted ash, and it swirls lazily with each step you take. Above you is no sky, only a ceiling of shimmering mineral, faintly glowing with the light of something that's not quite a sun. A breeze, that shouldn't exist here, brushes against your face. It's cool, but not cold. Almost meditative, like someone trying to exhale without disturbing the silence. You round a corner, and the architecture changes. No longer sharp and imposing, but simple. Domed chambers carved into stone, soft as velvet under your fingers. This place is older than Olympus, built not for glory, but necessity. A holding pen for humanity's endnotes. But you're not afraid because nothing here is in a hurry. Even time seems to sigh and stretch like it's about to doze off. And then you see it. The first sign. A stone marker, tilted slightly, with a word in ancient Greek that loosely translates to quiet. Someone etched it with care. Below it, a small sprig of something green pushes up through the dust. Against all logic, something is growing. Historians still argue whether the Greeks ever truly imagined an underworld that could bloom. But here, the myth leans poetic. It's said Hades once tried to plant a garden. Not for beauty. Not even for food. Just for calm. For the sound of leaves rustling instead of moaning spirits. For the company of growing things that didn't ask questions. You step over a tiny stream, a trickle, really, that winds between your feet. The water is impossibly clear, so much so that it reflects memories rather than your face. One ripple shows a moment you don't quite recall. A summer day, some laughter, someone handing you a plum. It disappears before you can hold on to it. And that's the magic of this place. The underworld isn't scary, it's sleepy. And Hades, he was never Avalane, just a very tired introvert with bad PR. The myths got flashy over time, yes. Poets needed villains. But older texts paint him not as cruel, but reserved. Just a god with a job no one else wanted. You get the dead, Zeus said, likely while tossing lightning bolts like confetti. Poseidon took the sea and made waves, literally. Hades got the basement. Still, he took it in stride. Or tried to. Imagine being handed a cosmic janitor role for eternity. No sunrises, no parades, just a queue of souls and a backlog of paperwork taller than Cerberus. But he was meticulous. That's something even Homer couldn't deny. Every soul had a place, every river a purpose, every boundary clear. He ran the underworld like a minimalist Airbnb, with strict check-in policies and a no-hero drama rule, which is exactly why the idea of a garden made sense. In a realm where everything is endings, Hades longed for something beginning, something green, something quiet. You pause again beside a patch of moss growing inexplicably on stone. It smells faintly of thyme and, oddly, honey. You reach down to touch it, soft, inviting. And then it pulses ever so slightly, like it's breathing. You pull your hand back. Let it rest. a voice might say, though no one is there. And you do. You keep walking, not because you know where you're going, but because here, movement is gentle. Above, the ceiling opens slightly, revealing a glimpse of the river Lethe, its waters cascading from one floating marble spout to another. They say drinking from it makes you forget. But even just watching the flow seems to smooth out the wrinkles in your thoughts. There's no sense of threat here, just space. Soft, gray space with occasional greenery that shouldn't be. And it all makes you wonder, what if Hades was never trying to rule the dead, but simply comfort them? What if this place wasn't a prison, but a padded room for tired souls to finally exhale? You lean against a tree that shouldn't grow in rock, but does. Its bark is silver, its leaves folded like the wings of sleeping birds. And somewhere in the distance, someone hums a lullaby. It could be Hades himself, or maybe just the wind. You follow the soft humming, low and steady, like the sound of breath through a hollow flute, deeper into the cavernous folds of the underworld. It winds gently, echoing off columns carved with faces. Not screaming faces, but neutral ones. Calm. Eyelids closed. Like statues caught mid-nap. You pause at one such pillar and notice a small inscription at its base. Brother, not forgotten. A gesture from Hades? Possibly. He wasn't exactly known for grand emotions, but subtle gestures. Yes, those were his language. Growing up, Hades had the misfortune of being the quiet middle child in the most dysfunctional divine family you could imagine. The kind where your dad, Cronus, eats you for fear you'll overthrow him. Classic. You and your siblings spend the formative years of your existence in your father's stomach. A bit tight, not much sunlight, and certainly no gardening. Then Zeus, the baby of the family, pulls the ultimate jailbreak, cuts open Dad, and out tumble the siblings like a celestial piñata. Poseidon, loud and aquatic. Hestia, warm and domestic. Hera, political and terrifying. Demeter, nurturing and stormy. And Hades, older, serious, quiet. Historians still argue whether Hades ever truly wanted to rule anything. Some say he preferred solitude to supremacy. But when the cosmos needed carving up, he got the underworld. Not out of punishment, but practicality. He was steady. He could handle it. You imagine that meeting, the divine lottery of realms. Zeus, stretching his arms dramatically. Sky, mine. Poseidon, already halfway into a tidal wave. Dibs on the sea! Hades, rolling his eyes, drawing the shortest straw. Great. Dead people. Awesome. You pass a fresco on the wall showing that very moment. Zeus is painted with arms wide, thunderbolt in hand, teeth too white to be trustworthy. Poseidon has a fish crown and a chest puffed like a peacock. Hades stands to the side, half-shadowed, holding a pomegranate and wearing an expression that says, I didn't ask for any of this. And yet, down here, you see his touch everywhere. The order, the precision, even the quietude. Hades wasn't flashy like his brothers. He didn't need temples or parades. He needed stillness, which is exactly what this space provided. The underworld wasn't meant to be scary. It was supposed to be structured. A filing system for souls, fields of asphodel for the average, Elysium for the exceptional, Tartarus for the troublesome. Everything had a drawer, a label, a gentle hush. But the problem with families, especially divine ones, is they never really leave you alone. You duck under a stone arch draped with ancient vines, and you hear the faint echo of laughter. Not from joy, but from chaos. Heroic chaos. Hercules, Theseus, Orpheus. The list of men who barged in here on quests is long and loud. Mortals with egos big enough to treat death as a detour. Always kicking over urns, bribing the dog, begging for their girlfriends back. And who had to deal with it? Not Zeus, not Athena, Hades. You reach a quiet pool where coins shimmer on the surface. Offerings. Prayers. Some are old enough to be dust. Others sparkle with a recent wish. A soft sigh drifts up from the water. Not wind, just weariness. You sit by the edge and imagine Hades at a divine family reunion. Everyone's talking over each other. Artemis is off in the woods. Ares is bragging about war wounds. Aphrodite's doing her usual drama. And Hades? In the corner. Probably with a cup of watered-down ambrosia, nodding politely, wondering when he can get back to his cave. He didn't hate his family, he just didn't thrive around them. Back in the underworld, he had systems. Cerberus at the gate, Charon on the river, judges for the souls, even a guest list. It was, in a way, comforting. In a way. But then came Persephone. Ah, yes, that pomegranate interlude is still ahead. For now, you only see signs of it. A few half-wilted flowers here. A warmth in the stone that shouldn't exist. You'll get to her soon. But first, let's linger here, with the younger Hades. Newly crowned, begrudgingly in charge, trying his best to stay out of the spotlight. You walk down a corridor lined with ghost light torches, blue flames flickering in slow motion. You touch one. It doesn't burn, just tingles. In the quiet, you imagine Hades journaling. Not for drama, for clarity. His to-do list might read, train Cerberus to sit, reorganize soul queue, add moss to hallway, tell Karen to stop charging extra. Consider planting fig tree. Small things, peaceful things. But in a world filled with echoes and end-of-life paperwork, even small acts feel revolutionary. You pass a room that might once have been his study. A desk carved from black stone. A feather quill dipped in ink made from the river Styx. A cup, untouched. And on the wall, a sketch. A very rough one. Of a bench. A small patch of green beside it. A tree. The beginnings of a dream. Even gods, it seems, crave a place to sit quietly and hear nothing but the rustle of leaves. And here you are, centuries later, walking through his beginnings. Before Persephone, before drama, just Hades. The quietest god with the loudest job. You press onward, deeper into the underworld's hushed folds, where the air somehow grows quieter than silence itself. Here, the walls shift from smooth basalt to something else, almost like petrified bark. Veins of mineral light snake across the surface, giving it the vague look of wood frozen in time. You're no longer just in caves. You're in rooms, halls, nooks. Each one with a touch of personality. It's as if someone down here got really into interior design after 6 centuries of boredom. You run your fingers along the wall and feel carvings beneath the surface, delicate spirals and etchings that resemble vines. This is no accident. This was a vision. Someone tried to make this place livable, and that someone was Hades. He didn't settle for cold stone and fire. He added cushions, shadows with dignity, rooms that invited stillness rather than dread. It's not something the myths tell you. They're more interested in the drama, the stolen bride, the underworld judges, the whole Orpheus affair. But you're here to see the little things, like the bench tucked away in a quiet alcove. It's hewn from obsidian, yes, but shaped with a clear curve for back support. No thrones here, just a seat, facing a wall painted with stars, pinpricks of quartz embedded in deep slate, a ceiling so gently arched it hums when you breathe beneath it. You sit, because how could you not? The stone is cool but not unpleasant. In front of you, a small patch of gravel, and from that gravel, sprouts, tiny ones, green, determined, impossibly alive. Gardens, you realize, aren't just things of soil and sunshine. They're acts of rebellion in the darkest places. Historians still argue whether these mythical gardens were metaphors or memories, if the ancients truly imagined greenery blooming where souls wept. But the Greeks were poets as much as pragmatists. In their stories, life and death were neighbors, separated only by a thin olive branch. And so, Hades began planting. Not just with seeds, though you suspect he tried that too, but with space, stillness, rooms that breathed, corridors that bent away from sorrow. You imagine him kneeling once, in this very chamber, pressing his palm into the ash-laced dirt, wondering if anything would grow. The king of the dead, whispering to a bulb, "Just try, okay?" It's easy to joke, but the act was tender, brave even. You leave the bench and follow a series of floor tiles shaped like lily pads. They lead you to another room, this one round, lit from above by a wide, glowing skylight. But there's no sky, just a disk of shimmering crystal that mimics dawnlight. Soft, golden, perfect for photosynthesis. If anything here actually did that. In the center, a tree. It's stunted, barely 5 feet tall, its bark pale, its branches thin. But it's real. You walk closer, and you see tiny leaves like emerald teardrops, each one trembling gently, despite the still air. And beneath it? A chair? Wooden? Where did he get wood? And hand-carved. clearly by someone who'd seen chairs but didn't build them often. It wobbles slightly. The legs are uneven, but it stands. Hades likely sat here, not as a king, but as a gardener, a watcher, maybe even a dreamer. And on the wall behind the chair, a mural. Subtle. Grays and whites, not for flair, but for peace. It shows a garden not of color, but of shape. Trees forming arches, vines crawling over temples, birds perched, silent. In the corner, a lone figure with a staff staring at it all. No crown, just quiet. Cerberus probably wandered these rooms. You imagine muddy paw prints causing chaos in the soil beds. Charon dropping off crates of ghost dung compost. Hermes showing up unannounced, boots tracking stardust. And Hades, sighing, sweeping, replanting. There's a quirky record, fringe, possibly apocryphal, of Hades requesting imported surface goods for domestic improvement. Among them, 2 amphorae of topsoil, a packet of barley, and 3 boxes of those lovely white lilies Demeter keeps showing off. The scroll ends with a note. Denied. Underworld budget already exceeded. Poor guy, just wanted lilies, got ledger limits instead, but he tried anyway. You notice something unusual now. The sound. Or the absence of it. There's a weight to this kind of silence. It isn't hollow, it's full. Like the pause after a deep thought. The hush of a forest at twilight. And Hades designed it that way. He wasn't just curating the dead. He was crafting an atmosphere, a vibe, a mood board that screamed, or rather whispered, "Please do not disturb." You step through another arched doorway, and the lighting changes again. Here, the walls glow with amber. Warm, sleepy, and scattered across the floor are bowls, some filled with pebbles, others with dried petals. Arranged, not randomly, carefully. Almost like offerings to something sacred. But no altar, no statues, just space. Maybe this was the garden. Not a space of chlorophyll and chirping birds, but one of alignment. Of rooms that made you breathe slower. Of paths that curled, not to confuse, but to lull. Hades wasn't trying to impress. He was trying to unwind. And you're right there with him. Let the myths worry about drama. Let the legends chase their monsters. You're walking beside the one god who wanted a chair, a tree, and a little peace and quiet. And maybe, just maybe, a patch of mint. But that's a story for later. You follow the scent before you see her. It's subtle, drifting through the stone corridors like a sigh on warm air, part citrus, part crushed leaves, part longing. A scent that shouldn't belong in the underworld but does. Then you enter the chamber. It's brighter than the others, with light that filters from somewhere you can't quite place. Not the ceiling, not the walls. It seems to bloom from the presence at the center. Persephone. She stands beside a small fountain that trickles with water too clear to be natural. The sound it makes is hypnotic, like a lullaby played one drop at a time. She's not in her more famous form, the queen of the underworld, cold-eyed and regal. No, here she's young, barefoot. Her fingers trail through the petals of a pomegranate flower, and you arrive just in time to see her make the choice. They always say it was a trick. That Hades lured her here, offered the fruit, bound her with pomegranate seeds like a cosmic fine print clause. But you watch her now, staring at the fruit in her palm, round, red, glowing faintly from within, and you see hesitation, not ignorance. She knows, maybe not the full consequences, but she senses the gravity. And still, slowly, she lifts it to her lips. Crunch! The seeds break, sweet, sharp, irrevocable. Historians still argue whether this story was ever about abduction, or if it was, perhaps, a coded rite of passage, a metaphor for a girl stepping into power, into cycles, into a duality of life and death. But here, in this version, it feels more intimate, like she wasn't trapped, but curious. You step back and let the scene soften. Persephone fades slightly, becomes less a figure and more a feeling, because this part of the underworld isn't carved by Hades alone. Her fingerprints are everywhere. In the soft moss between stones, in the arching trellis near the back wall, where vines crawl upward toward a roof that isn't there. In the ceramic bowl filled with seeds, not offerings, but leftovers. As if someone was planting and snacking at the same time. You sit on a wide step nearby. It's smooth, warm to the touch, the kind of stone that remembers sunlight, and you wonder what conversations passed between them. Did she complain about the chill? Did he apologize for the drafts? Did she teach him how to prune? Did he grumble about the roots cracking the tiles? You imagine them walking these corridors together, not as captor and captive, but as two very different beings figuring out how to share a space. She, the daughter of Demeter, goddess of harvest, born from abundance, sunshine, and riotous bloom. He, the reluctant king of shadow, custodian of endings, a creature of hush and stone. Oil and water, but maybe also compost and seed. Together, they began to shape this realm into something new. Not just a holding cell for the dead, but a rhythm, a cycle, a place where decay wasn't an ending, but a beginning. You run your hand over a planter nearby. It's hewn from volcanic rock, etched with spirals that mimic vines. Inside, a small green shoot pushes upward. Not much, but enough. And beside it, a label scratched onto a slate, "Try again." You laugh softly. Maybe that was Persephone's idea of optimism. Or maybe Hades' idea of humor. There's a fringe theory, barely whispered among classicists, that Persephone was the one who taught Hades how to garden. That before her arrival, the underworld was all right angles and echoing corridors. But with her came dirt, seeds, patience, a softer light. The myths, of course, prefer the drama. They like to tell you Hades stole her, that Demeter raged, that Zeus intervened. And maybe all that's true. Or maybe the gods were just as bad at communication as everyone else. But here, in this corner of the underworld, the two of them seem less myth and more roommates. Unexpected companions making peace with compromise. You glance at a nearby vine, its tendrils climbing toward a lantern hung on a crooked hook. Someone, probably Persephone, has tied a red ribbon at its base. No explanation, just color in the gray. You follow the path behind the fountain now. It leads to a narrow hallway, the walls hung with drying herbs. Lavender, rue, mint. And then, as if summoned by memory, you remember the tale of Mintha, another figure tangled in Hades' garden. Not metaphorically, but literally. She was a nymph, beautiful, light-footed, and she caught his attention. Some say they shared a moment, a glance, a conversation. Others say it was more, but Persephone found out. Or, in some versions, it was her mother, Demeter, with a temper as fertile as a monsoon. Either way, Minthe ended up crushed underfoot, literally. Turned into the plant we now call mint. It's hard to know what to make of the story. Scholars argue whether Minthe was a tragic love or a cautionary tale, whether she existed before Persephone or was simply a plot device added later. But the scent in the hallway lingers, bright, sharp, a reminder. Gardens, after all, are complicated places. They hold beauty and betrayal, growth and decay, sweetness and sting. You pause beside a small dish of crushed mint leaves, placed reverently beside a stone bust of a woman with windswept hair. Is it Minthe, maybe? Or maybe just someone Hades remembered? The underworld forgets nothing, and forgives selectively. You press on, the scent of mint fading behind you. The path curls back toward the central rooms. And now, you feel a subtle shift, a deepening. The roots of the garden are spreading, and so is the story. You emerge from the herbal hallway and immediately feel the shift, like stepping from a greenhouse into a library. The air is denser here, not musty, but packed with a different kind of stillness. Intellectual. Old. Worn in like the corner seat of an ancient armchair. Welcome to the realm of complaints. No, not Tartarus, not Elysium, not even the fields of Asphodel. This is something unofficial, tucked in beside the quieter chambers of the underworld. A lounge for the dead, who never quite shut up. You've entered the part of Hades' realm where souls gather not to wail, but to chat. At first it's whispers, then murmurs, then full-on debates. You drift toward the sound, and sure enough, there they are. Philosophers, kings, minor poets, disgraced chefs, two Spartans arguing over goat leather, and someone from the future trying to explain Wi-Fi. And Hades? Oh, he hates it. This wasn't in the blueprint. He carved out this wing, if myth is to be believed, as a kind of break room, a neutral space where ghosts could drift and decompress. But instead, they converse. Constantly. You pass a group of Athenian elders locked in debate about the ethics of fig taxation. One of them knocks over a ghostly amphora to prove a point. It reforms itself, but still. You catch snippets as you walk by, and that's why I told Pericles no more olives. A toga is not a napkin, Demetrius. I don't care how late the banquet was. And clearly the underworld needs a podcast. You press on, trying not to laugh too loud. There's a fringe tale, barely preserved in the footnotes of one dusty manuscript, that Hades once tried to install a no talking after sundown rule. It lasted precisely 1 week. The dead revolted, not violently, just loudly. They filled his chambers with small talk and ghost gossip. They debated which rivers had the best reflective surfaces. They held poetry slams. One ghost even wrote a one-man play titled Waiting for Obolus. Hades was not amused. Historians still argue whether this storytelling wing was part of the official underworld geography or just a metaphor for memory. After all, the Greeks didn't see death as an ending, but as a liminal space, a long, quiet hallway where stories echo indefinitely. And what is a garden, really, without a few talkative squirrels? Still, you can imagine Hades pinching the bridge of his nose as Homer tries to recite the Iliad backward for the 12th time. To be fair, some of these stories are compelling. You pass a circle of souls listening to a woman describe the collapse of Atlantis, with charts. Another group is reenacting the Peloponnesian War using pebbles and bread crusts. And near the back wall, someone's arguing passionately about olive oil's superiority as both a salad dressing and an embalming agent. You finally spot the host of this unintended open mic night, an older soul perched on a cushioned block, lecturing on whether consciousness survives in the pith of fruit. You don't linger. Instead, you follow the faint sound of scratching, not ominous, more like writing, and you find it. A small room, walled in polished obsidian, covered floor to ceiling with scrolls. This, you suspect, was Hades' version of a panic room. Here, he could escape the droning philosophers and immortal gossip to scribble down his thoughts. You pick up one of the scrolls at random. It's surprisingly well organized. The ink is precise, the handwriting meticulous. And the title? Proposal, Relocating Chatty Ghosts to the Elysian Fringe. A footnote reads, Include olive tree buffer. You laugh quietly. Even the god of the dead needed boundaries. And maybe that's the real reason he wanted a garden. Not just for beauty, but for silence. A place without lectures, without banter, just the sound of wind brushing leaves. You step back out into the debate lounge, weaving between groups of dead souls reliving past arguments like they're episodes of a favorite sitcom. You spot one man walking in circles, muttering, I told them not to cross the Hellespont during a south wind. Over and over. You nod politely and keep walking. Persephone, you suspect, found this place hilarious. She probably encouraged them. She would have laughed behind her hand while Hades grumbled, retreating to his study and adding another scroll to his Reasons to Install Soundproof Vines file. And yet, for all his sighing, he never shut them down. Because deep down, Hades understood death needed space to breathe, to speak, to unwind. So maybe the garden he dreamed of wasn't always made of plants. Maybe it was this. Room to ramble, and someone patient enough to let it happen. You press onward now, letting the murmur fade behind you. The ghosts still talk, but the path ahead is lined with quiet. Hades would be pleased. The debate chamber fades behind you like a dream you only half remember. The murmurs dissolve into a cottony silence as you walk, and once again the underworld pulls you back into its lullaby. You start to notice fur on the floor. Not loose hairs, tufts. Thick, glossy, and definitely from something large. And then, the unmistakable sound. Thud, thud, thud. Not footsteps exactly, but paws, heavy ones. And a snort. Low, wheezy, almost like a snore at the wrong speed. You freeze. A shape stirs in the dim light ahead. 3 shadows rising and blending like smoke, until they resolve into one massive creature. Cerberus, the Hound of Hades, guardian of the gates, the original good boy with a triple personality. He lumbers toward you with a gait somewhere between a lion and a pile of blankets. His 3 heads blink independently, one alert, one sleepy, one suspicious. The center head sniffs in your direction. The left yawns. The right coughs up a squeaky bone. You hold very still, and then you feel it. A nudge. Not aggressive, just curious. One wet nose presses into your shoulder, then another into your palm. The last one rests atop your head like a hat made of warmth and slightly sour breath. Cerberus has accepted you, probably because you smell like moss and regret. You slowly reach up and scratch behind the left ear. The middle tail, yes, he has 3, wags once, lazily. You've been approved. There's a scroll in a dusty archive somewhere that lists Cerberus' favorite treats. Top of the list, ghost bacon. Ethereal, smokeless, vegan. Second on the list, ball made of river stones. Least favorite activity, fetch. Hades tried once. Tossed a stick. Cerberus watched it land. Sat down. Chewed the stick without moving. One head barked. The other 2 glared at Hades like he'd committed war crimes. Fetch was henceforth banned. You imagine the training sessions, the bribery, the chaos, the brief period when Cerberus tried yoga, but kept swallowing the mats. And tucked behind it? A basket of toys. One is a stuffed hydra, already headless. Another squeaks when you step on it, startling even Cerberus. You sit on a low stone bench as he pads over to lie beside you. All three heads flop to the floor, overlapping like some mythological jigsaw puzzle. You scratch behind his ears, gently. The fur is thick, warm, and humming faintly, like a purring thundercloud. Historians still argue whether Cerberus symbolized protection, chaos, or simply the world's most determined lapdog. But to Hades, he was clearly more than a guard. He was company, a soft, slobbery wall between him and the drama of gods and ghosts. Persephone liked him too, at least when he wasn't digging up her flower beds. There's a half-erased inscription on one wall that reads, "Cerberus, do not eat the tulips again. P." You stretch out your legs, and one of the heads raises slightly to rest on your thigh. Heavy, comforting, like a sleepy bowling ball that wants pets. You oblige, because you get it now. This was never about punishment or dread. It was about containment, stillness, space to feel without being overwhelmed. Even the fearsome Cerberus, with his growls and teeth and mythic duties, has learned to nap. Somewhere nearby, a fountain trickles softly. Not dramatic, not carved in the shape of skulls, just water. And Hades? You can picture him nearby. Not in a throne, but in a deep chair, reading a scroll sideways while absently tossing a chew toy. Not for fetch, just for fun. Maybe that's what surprises people most about this place. They come expecting punishment, fire, screams. Instead, they get a napping dog, a half-dead garden, and a king who just wants the voices to quiet down for a minute. There's a small plaque on the wall, handwritten, lopsided. It says, "Please whisper. The dog has anxiety." You grin, because of course. And just when you think this part of the journey is done, Cerberus rolls over. All three heads snore at different rhythms, like a sloppy lullaby composed by a child in a trombone. You lean against him, warm and safe. The underworld breathes around you. Hades did good. He didn't need Cerberus to terrify. He needed him to guard the peace. And for that, a dog, especially one with triple the ears, is perfect. You rest there a moment longer, wrapped in fur and silence, before you rise again. You smile, the path calls again, and the next part of the garden waits.